Hello everyone and welcome to the video. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, uh, yeah, let me know what you think about the content. And here we have somehow a PC that I bought for $220. Now, I'm not sure how this PC only cost $220. I got this from a Cash Converters, which is a local store here in South Africa. I believe they exist in England as well. And yeah, I feel like sometimes these stores just don't know what things are worth. And yeah, I paid $220 for this, which equates to about 4,000 Rand. And yeah, let me run through the specs for you. So we have the Cooler Master. I believe this is the Master Box something. It's um, it's not a window chassis, which is the only thing that I don't like, but it's a very big chassis. I don't know if it's full ATX, but it might be just under full ATX. It's got some nice ventilation at the front here. Let me show you. As you can see there, it's got some nice ventilation. It's got a fan here somewhere that pulls in air. It's got the DVD-ROM at the top there. It's quite heavy. And yeah, so that's the case. It's quite an expensive case. I actually checked the price for it. And then inside we have a Seasonic 750 watt, I think gold rated or maybe bronze rated power supply. So it's quite a good power supply. GPU there, we have a GTX 964 gigabyte variant. It's quite a big one. It's a palette card and quite nice looking. It's got quite a unique look to it if you see it at that angle. Quite a nice looking card. We've got some sort of Cooler Master Hyper 212 something, what do you call it? Fan setup there. So it's got two fans for the CPU, and it's got the heatsink. I don't know which one it is specifically. I couldn't find it, but it looks quite high end for the price at least. And then over here with the hard drives, we have two terabyte hard drives. This didn't come with an SSD, and that's the one upgrade that I'm going to be making to it. So I have a 128 gig Hikvision SSD that I'm going to be putting into this. As you can see, I didn't mention, but the power supply is fully modular, and it seems to have a lot of modular cabling. This is a X99. Is it an ASRock board? I'm not sure who the manufacturer. Yeah, it's an ASRock board. So quite a high-end board. It's a couple of years old now, but I think about 5 or 6 years. But it's quite a high-end board. It's got something like 12 SSDs. It's got SSDs. I mean SATA ports. It's got many USB slots at the back. It's got on each side of the CPU here. It's got four DIMM slots for RAM. At that angle, you can see it. Right now, it's got 16 gigs of RAM in, so it's 4 times 4 sticks there on each side of the CPU. But if you were to double that, you would have 32 gigs. But I mean, if you put 8 gig sticks into each of these, you could have 64 gigs, and I think up to a maximum of 128. So 16 gigs of RAM right now. It is DDR4, but it's like a very slow speed DDR4. And then as for the CPU, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I believe it's a Core i7 5800 maybe. Is that it? It's a fifth gen, which I believe was the first DDR4 generation. But it's a fifth gen, high-end fifth gen CPU. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but we'll check what it is in the benchmarking segment. So yeah, that's the PC. Yeah, it's an insane price for $220. I mean, just the graphics card, a 964 gig would probably go for about $50 to $60 now. The CPU is still around $50. Motherboard's around like $50 to $80. The case is very expensive. It's got 2 terabyte hard drives. It's got a nice power supply. So I feel like this was a big bargain. And what we're going to do now is we're going to clean this up. And so I'm going to remove everything, repaste the CPU, clean out, you can see there's a lot of dust, clean out all of the dust, and clean everything, remove everything, clean everything, put everything back in, and then we're going to do some benchmarking. So let's move on to the cleaning. Stay with me. Okay, so I've finished building and cleaning the PC. As you can see, here it is, and looking quite nice. I took off the side panel just so that you can see the insides for this benchmarking run, and we have our usual benchmarking um, parts there, you know, with the peripherals and the screen and everything. Just normal HD screen. Fresh Windows installed, gonna run some games now. So I just wanted to go over the parts list again because I forgot what was in it when I showed it the first time. So for the CPU, we actually have the 5820K, which is the unlocked SKU, I believe. Quite a powerful CPU. It's got 6 cores, and I think it's got 12 threads or 6 threads. But it's a 6-core CPU, and it's a little bit older now, but it's still pretty powerful. So, you know, again, consider this whole PC costs $220. That's insane. For the graphics card, we have the 4 gig GTX 960. And then as for the RAM, I thought there was 16 gigs of RAM in this, but there's actually 32 gigs. And the RAM was rated at around 1800 megahertz, but then I set the XMP profile to 2666, and it actually took it. So the RAM is running just under 3000 megahertz right now. And so, yeah, better specs than what I actually thought it was. So let's jump into the benchmarks, see how it does. And keep in mind this PC was only $220 again. Let's get into it. Alright, here we are in the Crash Bandicoot 4 benchmark. This is running on Ultra Graphics. It's called Insane, and this is running at HD. So right off the bat, we are getting 60 FPS, 61, 59, so seems to be around that kind of 60 FPS mark on maximum settings on this. So keep in mind, this PC is running a GTX 960, the 4 gigabyte version of that card. But you know, the 960 is a dated card by now, and yeah, these are all newer games that I'm running with it, so it wasn't designed with these games in mind, and so getting high 50s right now, I feel like this is still a good result, considering that, especially considering this PC costs $220 in total. I added the SSD to it, but that's only for Windows. You know, the whole PC at that price is just insane, and this is a testament to what kind of performance you can get when you look around and get a good deal, because this PC was, you know, remarkably cheap, and I feel like this was a fantastic deal. So, and the thing is as well, this CPU is maybe around 6 or 7 years old at this point. I think around 6, and it used to be one of the best CPUs 5, 6 years ago, and so right now it's still more than good enough for games, because it is a 6-core CPU. I think it has 6 threads, but it might have 12 threads. I'm not sure. And it is the K SKU, so you could, even if you get like a really good CPU cooler, which this PC does have, to be fair, you could even overclock it. Looking at the stats up there, I know it's a bit difficult to see because the screen is very bright, but it's at 55 FPS right now. I think you can see that part. It is the GPU is pulling 100 watts, which is quite a lot actually for a GPU. But this is an older GPU, and they did pull a lot of power back then. The GPU is at around 100% utilization and running at around 70 degrees. Feels very cold to the touch, but that's the die itself. CPU is at around 50 degrees. The CPU is only being used 17%, and so you have a massive bottleneck with the GPU. So I think if you threw something like a 1080 into this, you would have fantastic performance. Maybe max out every game at 1080p, maybe even move a little bit into that 1440p territory. The frame time is good. The CPU is pulling 40 watts, 35 watts, which is nothing. And we have 32 gigs of RAM available. It's only using 5 gigs. So that's it for the Crash Bandicoot test. Let's move on to Doom Eternal and see if this bargain of a PC can handle Doom Eternal at, let's say, high settings. Alright, here we have Doom Eternal running at high settings. Everything is at high, and yeah, it's getting around 60 FPS right now. This is outside, so it's the more difficult area to run as well. Let's do a little bit of combat and see how it goes. This is a tough guy. Man, I love these eliminations. It's always so entertaining to see. Yeah, 45 FPS, 47 FPS, 60 FPS. So it just depends on where you are, how much things you're looking at. But this is like a good example of a more demanding area in the game where there's a lot going on, a lot of enemies running around, following you, shooting at you. Basically a lot for the game to do, a lot to load. And but this feels fantastic. Usually when I'm testing on this system, the mouse doesn't feel very good. But it actually feels nice now just because the game feels smooth. You see that frame time there is at around 18 milliseconds. And then looking at the GPU, it's still around 70 degrees being used. 93% utilization. It's pulling around 90 to 100 watts. Yeah, CPU is at 50 degrees. Memory, we're using around 4 gigs of RAM. 6 gigs of RAM. We're using around 4 gigs of VRAM, so that's maxed out. And then what else? We're only using around 30% of the CPU, and the CPU is only pulling around 30 watts. So altogether, the PC is pulling maybe around 200 watts if you include all the fans and hard drives and everything, maybe around 250. So interesting to see that it's not working too hard. Let's see in this next area how the frame rate holds up. So remember, this is Doom Eternal running at high, and this graphics card is around 8 or 9 years old at this point. And the game is running easily at 40 FPS, and that is with the bottleneck of the GPU still happening. So if you were to add a GPU, even like a 1070 or like a 5700 XT from AMD, I feel like you would get even better performance. So yeah, considering the price that I paid for this computer, I feel like it's still a fantastic deal for $220. It's one of those rare ones where you get really lucky and just get a fantastic deal, because usually a PC like this would cost around $500. You would probably ask for a better GPU at that price, but considering what came with this PC, considering the 4 terabytes of hard drive space, the only thing that I had to do to upgrade this PC was add a SSD for Windows, and also consider that Doom isn't even running from an SSD right now, and this is the outside section as well. So yeah, fantastic performance. It hasn't dropped below 40 that I've seen, so I am very happy with the result. Let's kill this guy quick. And yeah, I just feel like the game is running extremely well right now. I would be curious to see what an inside area would do for the frame rate, but I'm not sure if there's one coming up soon. Let's see if we can get past this and just go to the next place. But yeah, again, fantastic performance. It's always around 40 to 60 from what I can see, so I am more than happy with the performance, and the frame time is always very good as well. So yeah, I think that's it for Doom Eternal. I think in interior spaces we could get around probably around like 70 FPS quite easily, but this is running at a comfortable average of around 50. So let's move on to the next test. Alright, moving into the Hitman benchmark here, and everything is set to the maximum graphics at HD, getting around 40 FPS on the outside, moving up to 60, 70 now, really low, really low frame time as well. Using around 6.5 gigs of RAM, and CPUs at 50 degrees, GPUs at 70, so that stayed constant, so that's good. The CPU is working a little bit harder in this one, around 40% for the most part, pulling around almost 50 watts. GPU is running at 100% utilization and pulling around 100 watts for the most part, and using around 3 gigs of RAM. So we have a little bit of leeway to increase the textures, although it is already at maximum, so this game just doesn't use that much texture memory. And yeah, I remember hearing that this game is very CPU dependent, and so you can see that a little bit with the CPU working between 30 to 40%, which isn't a lot because we have a massive bottleneck with the graphics card. But yeah, I'm thinking what would be the best combo for this PC if the graphics card were to be replaced. Maybe something like a 980 Ti or something like that would run very well in this PC. But again, for $220, I'm not complaining at all. This was a massive bargain. Yeah, running well, seems to be between 40 and 50 for the most part, which is a good result. And for the first time, I would say for the price, you couldn't even get a console for the money. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, moving into the Red Dead Redemption 2 tests here, and this is running at 1080p Full HD medium settings, getting around 30 FPS right now, so not the best result right off the bat. Using around 100% of the CPU, only using around 15% of the GPU. Other way around, using around 100% of the GPU, 15% of the CPU, and getting around 35 to 40 FPS for the most part. Everything set to medium graphics settings. Using around 9 gigs of RAM, so we've upped the RAM usage a little bit. GPUs at around 66 degrees, CPUs at around 48 degrees. CPUs pulling around 30 watts, GPUs pulling around 100 watts. So still just standard for that as far as these components go. And yeah, not the best result out of the few we've done, but playable, I think, at least. And you can always turn down the graphics still a little bit. You can turn down the resolution. And again, as you can see, the CPU is not working hard at all. There's a little bit of a graphics bottleneck again, but the CPU isn't doing too much, not being engaged too much, and we have more than enough RAM with the 32 gigs present in the system. More than enough RAM to support whatever game we want to play. There's no game that needs, even 16 gigs, never mind 32. So yeah, between 30 to 40 FPS for the most part. Doesn't fall below 30, but doesn't really go above 40 for the most part. And not the best result, but not a bad result either. It's definitely playable. Doesn't seem laggy, if I can put it that way. It just seems like a smooth 35 average FPS experience. So getting close to a console experience with this. But not having the graphics turned down all the way. There's still a lot of leeway to turn down things, and yeah, let's see how it feels when it's in the play kind of POV. Again, it just seems to be around 35 FPS, so it looks fantastic. It looks really nice, a lot of detail. It doesn't seem like medium settings at all. It looks like high settings. So hopefully everything applied fine, but yeah, a little bit of a glitch there. And yeah, just between 30 and 40 for the most part, getting closer to 30 than 40, but this is Saint Etienne. It is one of the most difficult areas in the game to run, so it's a good area to benchmark, to really stress the components. And yeah, again, it looks fantastic. It looks really good. Um, and I mean, if you look at the video, it doesn't seem laggy at all. So it's definitely playable. And yeah, the GPU is still working hard, still around 70 degrees Celsius. CPU still isn't doing that much, at around 50 degrees Celsius. But we did repaste the CPU, and we have a nice little CPU cooler over there. Quite a big thing actually. Um, this whole CPU socket is quite large, and yeah, just definitely happy with the result. That was some good shooting. Let's see when he throws the dynamite what the explosion is like. It'll be interesting to see if that really slows down the FPS, because it's at 29 now, and didn't really do anything. Dropped by like 2 FPS. So yeah, a playable result, but not the best result. I was hoping to get in the 40s, but like I said, if you have leeway to drop down the graphics even a lot more, and you could probably get up to like the 50s if you drop down the graphics for the most part. Just when you do drop the graphics on Red Dead Redemption 2, just be sure to keep some of the texture settings a bit higher, otherwise the floor looks absolutely awful. So yeah, not a bad result. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, moving into the Far Cry New Dawn benchmark here, and this is running at medium settings HD, getting around 55 FPS for the most part so far. This one is using the CPU a lot more. It's a bit all over the place. GPU is at 100% utilization, and the temperatures are around what they were before, using around 3 gigs of VRAM, so we can up the texture settings a little bit, using around 6.5 gigs of RAM. So we have a lot of leeway there. There's the dip that we sometimes get. And yeah, this has been above 50 FPS for the most part, below 40 there for the first time. Looks quite nice. You can play around with the settings a bit more. I think you can squeeze a little bit more texture settings out of it, texture quality. But yeah, good result, above 45 for the most part. I don't think it's been below that. So definitely a playable result, looks good. And yeah, that's it for the benchmarks. Let's talk about it. Alright, so there you have it for the $220 PC that somehow cost as little as it did. I think this was one of those situations where the shop in question, Cash Converters in this instance, didn't know what the PC was worth, because you could easily get $500 for this. And if you upgrade that GPU, you could get around 700. So very, very happy with the results, especially given the price again. And yeah, just a fantastic buy. Sometimes you get purchases like these and you see them, and yeah, it's just at times you see something and it's like you can't not buy it. And that's what this was for me. To run through the specs one last time: 750 watt bronze rated Seasonic power supply there, fully modular. You have some sort of Hyper 212 Cooler Master fan. I'm not sure exactly what it is. You've got the Pallet GTX 960 4GB, two times 2 terabyte hard drive, so 4 terabyte hard drive space, 32 gigs, 266 megahertz RAM. This SSD is the only thing that I added to this build. It came with the Cooler Master box and X99 ASRock motherboard. So again, fantastic value. When you see something like this out in the wild, you just have to get it. And sometimes you just have to trust your instinct and just purchase it, hope for the best. So I'm actually not going to sell this, so I'm not going to be making any profit off of it. I've promised this to my brother for the same price that I bought it for. So because his PC is dying, and he said that he would be interested in getting this for himself. So I'm happy that it worked out. fantastic purchase. Yeah, if you want to get into PC gaming and you can't afford it, I know it's expensive. Getting new PC parts, something that performs like this, getting it for new could be around $700. So um, it can be expensive. But do yourself a favor and just walk around to local secondhand shops. I don't know what it's like in other countries, but see if there is anything. And if you know a little bit about computers, you're more than likely to find something that you can convert, even if it is an old OEM system, even if it is not DDR4, even if it's DDR3. For gaming, sometimes you would be surprised at how much you don't need the newest technology to enjoy games. You're not going to run it at maximum, at quad, QHD or anything, but you can play games at HD, at a smooth pace, a nice FPS, get yourself a nice cheap keyboard and mouse, and with a PC like this, you even have a little bit of headway to stream, and down the line you can upgrade the graphics card, and that's pretty much all you would need to do. So, yeah, the deals are out there, you just need to find them. So, thanks for watching this one. That's about it for the video. If you like my content, like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment and engage with me. Yeah, that's about it. See you on the next one. Cheers.